We're heading to the National Aquarium in Baltimore. Joining us is the CEO, John Racanelli. John, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jeff. Great to be here.
Just by way of introduction, talk about your background a little bit. You've been here for less than a year.
Yes, that's correct. I've been here in Baltimore now since last July. I've been an ocean guy pretty much my whole life. I've been in the aquarium world for my whole career. I started at the Monterey Bay Aquarium out in California, and then built the Florida Aquarium down in Tampa, Florida. And have spent many years working with various conservation-based nonprofit organizations before coming here. In fact, the National Aquarium was a client of mine once years ago.
Well, how is this aquarium seen within the aquarium world? I know obviously it's been on the Inner Harbor for 3 decades now and is a huge landmark locally. How's it seen nationally?
It is nationally, it really is the National Aquarium. I first came here in 1984 when I was just starting at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I managed to get a tour of the place along with Liberace, the piano guy. And I've come back I had come back probably a dozen times to the National Aquarium during those years, because this is where the movement started. This is where it all began. And really the whole concept of ocean awareness in America through aquariums began right here almost 31 years ago now, when the National Aquarium opened. It's one of the top 4 aquariums in the country and really one of the trendsetters.
How do you see the connection between the aquarium and the Chesapeake Bay? Obviously, many of the exhibits are coming from the far corners of the world, different oceans. How closely do you want the aquarium to be associated with the local watershed?
As close as possible, Jeff, because the fact is we sit right here on the shore of the Chesapeake Bay. We're on Baltimore's Inner Harbor, but this is the upper reaches of the bay, and the Chesapeake is the most important wetland in all of North America. So the importance of Chesapeake Bay to all of our lives, and its importance, I think, is a metaphor for the health of oceans and aquatic bodies worldwide, it can't be overstressed. And we're all about inspiring conservation of the world's aquatic treasures. So for us, the Chesapeake has to be our number one commitment in terms of conservation.
Talk a little about the exhibits, if you would. We know it's more than fish tanks these days.
It sure is. Technologies have changed dramatically over the years, and one of the things that really matter to people now is being able to get engaged. In fact, our research tells us that people, for the most part, the best thing that comes of their experience is the social and emotional bonds that they form, both with the animals in the exhibits, but also with each other. So it's very important to engage people, and that's something that we're working on very much in the aquarium. The way we translate that is by having interpreters and guides on all over the exhibit floors. We have a program with students here in Baltimore who are called climate change interpreters. Their job is to try to help people understand why climate change is an issue, how much it affects the ocean, and therefore how much it affects their lives. For us, it's all about making connections. That's what we're about. And one of the things we'll be rolling out throughout the year ahead is all the ways, places, and times that people can make connections with aquatic animals, with the ocean itself, with Chesapeake Bay, and even with our Inner Harbor here.
In this area, obviously, awareness of many of those issues is very high. Talk a little from your national, global perspective about conservation and the challenges today, and how you see us able to make some progress.
There are a lot of challenges. It has to start with believing the science, and that's obviously, for people like us, that's really important. We've got to believe the basic science that we know is out there, such as the one that says that the ocean has absorbed about 25% of the carbon that's been put out in the planet, and much of that has come during the industrial era, and it's reached its capacity for absorption of carbon. What does that mean? What it means is that the ocean is taking in a lot of that carbon and preventing it from being in the atmosphere, creating a greenhouse effect like planet Venus. These cycles are not that complex, but one does have to listen to the science, and 100 national academies of science throughout the world have affirmed this. It's true, it's real, and therefore we've got to address it. What does that mean? It means minor changes to our lifestyles, sometimes major changes to our industrial approaches, changing the way we view things like fisheries. moving towards more sustainable and local sourcing of food, seafood, those kinds of things, trying to create a lighter footprint on the planet. None of it's complicated, and frankly, I don't believe that terribly difficult, but it does require some lifestyle changes. In terms of what it means to us, well, let's think about our kids and their kids, because we want them to have a planet that's at least as healthy as ours is now, if not more so. And I think we need to focus on trying to make this planet an Eden, the Eden that it's always been for many thousands of generations to come. And these next 10 years are probably more important than the next 10,000 in terms of the health and quality of the ocean and the aquatic bodies that we all live by.
John, a lot of those things are visible at the aquarium, really outdoors at this point, in terms of exhibits and floating wetlands and things like that.
Yes, during the Chesapeake Bay week, we're going to do all kinds of stuff here. We're relaunching our floating wetland, which is and by the way, working with the Downtown Partnership to do the same thing over at the World Trade Center, so that we can start to bring back wetlands to these hardscaped shorelines like the Inner Harbor. It creates more oxygenation. It creates habitat for fish and birds. It's all in all just. And it looks great. It's just better for all of us. We've also got several restoration events going on during the week, a couple of cleanups. And then on Earth Day weekend, we are announcing our partnership with the National Wildlife Federation as their new Maryland affiliate, which I think opens the door to all kinds of great opportunities for all of us. We're the National Aquarium, and we've made it one of our strategic goals to be national.
I would bet that almost everybody watching us has been to the National Aquarium over the last 30, 31 years. But many people, including me, frankly, not for quite some time. Why should everybody come back?
Absolutely, good question. You know, first of all, we want them to come back. We want them to come back over and over if they're willing. We'd love to see more families in the region become members, which is, of course, the best deal in town, because they get free admission for a whole year and don't have to worry about the cost. But we try to do all kinds of special events for Marylanders, and there will be more of that under my watch regarding things like Dollar Days, Fridays after 5, and some neat programs that Marylanders and Baltimoreans can come here at times when there's fewer tourists and less traffic, and therefore have a much more intimate experience. As far as the exhibits, they're always changing. One of the great things about being an aquarium is we really are a living museum. Everything changes day to day. We have births, we have changes, we bring in new animals. Our aquarists are very creative people, so they're always changing out these exhibits behind me and trying to make them better and more realistic and more like the world, the aquatic world that we're interpreting here, whether it's Australia, Chesapeake Bay, or the Amazon.
You mentioned pricing. There have been some changes, or there's something coming up?
At this point, we are looking at our pricing. We'll be doing some changes for the summer. That's fairly typical in this industry. The good news is that our pricing is still way behind that of almost all the other major aquariums in the country, who long ago crossed the great barrier beyond $30 a person. And like I say, one of the things that I've made a priority is that for folks coming from the outside, and remember, 70% of our guests come from outside Maryland, it's really not a barrier. For them, spending $25 to $30 per person adult is not necessarily a deterrent, because they're used to spending a lot more than that and going to places like New York City or Orlando for Disney World and those kinds of destinations. But for our local market, there are people for whom that's a burden. It's a barrier. So we've created various ways for people who live here to get a better deal, be able to come to the aquarium more often, see it when it's not as crowded, and really take advantage of the fact that they live here and this is their aquarium.
Talk about the Dolphins for a second. I want to ask, I don't know if it was before you got here. I know last year there were some unfortunate deaths of young dolphin calves. Has anything changed as a result of that? Does anything need to change?
Yeah, it has. Well, good question. To the first one, yes, things have changed. It was such a joyous, and it happened right before I got here, but it was a very joyous occasion when the two dolphins were born, and then it was followed very shortly thereafter by a very tragic discovery that both had died, both from completely different reasons, and in both cases, I think, because they had inexperienced moms. we've actually kept the males and females, well, they're not separate, but the males that are with the females are not of breeding age, because we don't want to see any more births right now until we've figured out what dynamics there are and what the best use of the space is for the animals. Probably the most important thing we're doing right now, though, is that starting May 4th, we're going to be rolling out dolphin discovery, and that's a whole new approach. You know, the challenge here is that with a dolphin show, and I emphasize that word show, people have to wait for the show to start, people have to pay extra for the show, and actually we can only accommodate up to half of the people who come here on a busy day. So half the people that come don't even get a dolphin experience, and the stadium, the amphitheater, is only in use for 2 hours a day, and often we're open for 10 hours. Looking at that, thinking about the dolphins and the humans, we said, you know, why don't we just open the doors, do away with the show and the price for admission to the show, and make it something that's available to every guest who comes into the aquarium. So that's what we're rolling out on May 4th. I think it's going to be great for the people, and the reason it's great for the dolphins is they're not going to have to follow us a rigid show program 4 times a day in and day out. We're going to give them an opportunity to do play behaviors. They get to toss balls to the kids and have them throw them back. There will be demos. They'll be demonstrating natural behaviors. The general idea here is to make it a lot more interactive and a lot more engaging, and give people a chance to really understand more about the life of dolphins, whether here or in the wild.
John Racanelli, head of the National Aquarium Institute. John, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Take care.